Hi guys, Mark Holfe here, back for another EE Live Q&A. I'm running a few minutes behind because today has been a complete disaster. All right, well, that's the life of an immigration lawyer. And I had the unfortunate experience this morning of having to meet with someone who had gotten themselves into quite a bit of trouble with immigration. And this is one of those issues that I've spoken about in the past. And many people ask me questions about whether or not they have to actually live in a province that they're nominated to reside in. So many people, when they can't qualify through the general provisions of express entry, then will seek nominations through the various provinces across the country. One of the more popular ones is the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program. Boy, it's been one of those days. All right, I'm back. So just to clarify, when individuals are going through the process of getting a nomination and get permanent residence that's supported by a province like the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program or the BC PNP or Nova Scotia or Prince Edward Island, I get these questions all the time. Do I actually need to live there? How long do I need to live there? Well, today, all of this just totally blew up for someone who had received a nomination from the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program. And they were already here in Canada, but had been residing in Alberta. And ultimately, because of that fact, when they went down to the border to complete their landing for the permanent resident application, the border officers asked them if they had planned, where they intended to live. And the individual had said that they planned to live in Alberta. And that was enough. It resulted in a deferred examination, a Section 44 report being written, which is basically a report to determine admissibility. And the person was then counseled to come back to the border to deal with the issue. And I met with them this morning, and there wasn't a lot that I could do. The reality is there's an obligation that you are going to go and live in the province that nominated you. And when you tell an officer that, no, I'm going to live somewhere else, they can completely unravel the permanent resident process. They can initiate the unraveling of it. So whatever you do, if there's someone who says, go through the process and just get nominated in Saskatchewan and you don't need to live there, you can go and live in Toronto, no one can stop you. Oh, yes, they can. And the whole purpose of the provincial nominee programs, everyone, are to allow provinces to recruit people that they think are going to come and live and work and settle in that province to make that province better. That's why it exists. And so the people that are not otherwise eligible to get drawn through the general provisions to just live anywhere, they're given a special invitation from the provinces to go and live there. And in exchange for becoming a Canadian permanent resident, what they're asking you as a candidate to do is to actually come, bring your talent, bring your education, bring your hard work ethic, and make that province better. And so when people use it or abuse the PNPs just to get to Canada, I have no patience for that. There's just no, because there's 10,000 other people that would be just dying to get that nomination. So I just wanted to bring that up. That's what I've been dealing with today. I had an awesome client who I should be completing an express entry application with this morning, 2 hours ago, that I had to miss that consultation to finalize the eAPR because this issue came up. And it happens frequently, guys, very, very frequently. Okay, so that's what I've had going on. I'm going to pull up here on my own screen this actual video and just make sure that everybody can hear me okay. And looks like my audio is going. That's awesome. Okay, so now that I have had a chance to kind of vent and tell you all the frustrations that I'm experiencing now, let me know where you're tuning in from. So don't forget to post there. Okay, so who do we have here? We've got Kiran. Hi, Kiran. Adita, hello. Hi, Adita. Anas says hello. Santhosh, hello, Mark Santhosh from India. Hey, how's it going? Pavneet says hello. Ifra says hello. Guillermo is giving me a couple question marks. I'm assuming that's probably, he was questioning why it's not working and why he's not seeing me. Justin is from India. Oh, there we go. Guillermo says, here we go. Awesome. Harish says hello. Sumer. And Dick says, hello, Mark. All right. So great. And people are giving me waves. All right. There we go. India. Lots of people from India. And I know you guys are waiting patiently, that you guys are, it's just about midnight there, if it's not already. And Mazer's from Ireland. Fasia says hi as well. And I love the fact that you guys are so patient with me when I'm totally mispronouncing your names. All right. Yesterday, I was out of the office. I had a wonderful, actually, I want to share a picture with you guys if I can pull it up here. Yesterday was a very special day for our family because we finally were able to get my son off as he left for his mission. Let's see if we can find it here. There we go, right here. That's a good one. He left for his mission to go down to Suriname. And it's really cool because he had to come home for about 5 months because he had an injury. He had an ACL injury that he had to deal with. But the reality is everything worked out just perfect. And he had to board the plane at we had to be at the airport at 4:30 in the morning. And now I'm going to jump over here and I'm going to show you a couple pictures here. All right. So this one here is all of us. Let's see if there we go. So this is at the airport yesterday morning. And there's my son, Adam, with his name tag on. And he flew from Calgary down to Curacao. And now he's just about getting ready in a couple days to then head off to Suriname and serve a mission for our church. So it was a big day for us. It was an early day. It basically took me out of the office at the end of the month, which is the busiest time for us. But we received the happiest news of all with this one right here, with him and the other missionaries that all arrived in Curacao. And yeah, we're super, super happy for him, excited for this new adventure. And I don't know if any of you live in Curacao or Suriname. I know that we've got a number of people that are members of the group from Trinidad and Port of Spain, which is really cool. And so ironically, my son's mission is the Trinidad Port of Spain mission. But just because things are not terribly safe right now in Port of Spain, they actually moved the mission home, the home base, I guess, for the missionaries to Curacao. So there you go. That is the latest with the Holthe family. That's what's been going on in our lives. And now I can officially focus on my practice once again, now that my son is off and we're just down to 2 kids at home. And my daughter, of course, as many of you know, is in Indiana serving a mission as well. So that's what's new with the Holthe clan. And yeah, we've got Guillermo says, congrats. That's awesome. Harish is from Canada. And Anas says, how are you, Mark? I'm doing great. Okay, those of you who are new to the EE Live Q&A, if you are interested, if you're watching this on YouTube as a recording, all you need to do if you want to send me a question is just put EE Live Q&A in the subject line and send an email right here to mholthe@stringham.ca, and then I will potentially consider your questions in an upcoming EE Live Q&A. So I'll stick these ones back down here where everybody can see them for later use. And I am going to, I'm just looking here. Let's see. Yeah, we'll stick that one up there. There, put a little symbol up. All right. So let's dive into these awesome questions. And Marlene says, LDS here. So Marlene is a member of my church. That's awesome, Marlene. Where do you live, Marlene? Let's see. Marlene, I can't quite tell where you're at. Maybe the Philippines, maybe not. Anyways, very cool. Okay, let's jump to these awesome questions here. And the first one on the list, I always start with the written ones, the ones that were sent in by email. And then once I get through these, then I turn the time open for the questions for all of you faithful listeners who are watching live. So first question, and I'm going to make sure once again that I track my lovely time on this. It says, this is proof of funds, and this is from Cyril. Cyril actually is who it's from. We have a savings account in France with most of the money will need to go to Canada. However, we are having a hard time getting the proof of funds letter from the bank. They're being very uncooperative. That's not surprising. Sometimes they're like that. The best they have given us is an account status document, not a letter addressed to us, with most information needed, but there isn't the 6-month average and no phone number for the bank, as it's the general contact details only. Will that be a problem? Do we need to insist? I'm not even sure if that would work anyways. Or do you think we should transfer the funds to our main account in the UK? Thank you in advance. No, I wouldn't worry about it, Cyril. Do the very, very best that you can. Understand that when you're going through this process, you're trying to provide documentation that the government of Canada wants for immigration purposes. And sometimes those requests conflict with with the bank's own internal policy. So it's quite common that they won't give you a detailed letter with the average balance for the past 6 months. So often what I'll include is bank statements. So that shows how much funds were in the bank account, all the deposits and all the withdrawals, and it shows a very complete history. And then I would include whatever the bank gives you. And so those things coupled together are usually enough. And then a simple explanation. I always attach letters of explanation saying, we've tried, but the bank refuses. And maybe you can get the bank to give you a letter saying it's not our policy to give such letters, so this is all we're going to issue. And maybe that would be the perfect thing that you could, just to close the loop, as you will, and to give that final little piece of confirmation that you've tried to do everything you can. It's just the bank that isn't cooperating. Okay, great question. Okay, and these ones today, because it was so crazy, I didn't even vet these. So I just printed them off and we're just going through them. Usually I'll look in advance to see if the question is a really good one. But today we'll just wing it, because that's what today is like. It's one of those crazy days. Okay. Okay, here's a good one. Okay, this is perfect. So this is from Pavneet. And Pavneet says, I had mailed you last week also, but no problem. I understand you're not liable to answer each and every member's question. Hope you'll pick my question this time. So there you go, Pavneet. Persistence pays off. My question is, my husband has well-settled business here and he needs time to wind it up. Moreover, my CRS score stands at 446 without accompanying spouse. Should I go for it? If so, can I take my 6-year-old kid with me, and how much time it will take to sponsor my spouse? Do I have to maintain a good bank balance in Canada and grab a good job to sponsor my spouse? Will it affect my case, as someone says that if your spouse is not accompanying you, Canadian immigration authorities could reject the case also? Okay, to start with, Pavneet, no, Canadian immigration authorities are not going to reject your case. They have established the rules, the regulations, the immigration legislation that governs the immigration process and express entry. There are ministerial instructions that break down exactly how an officer is to proceed when adjudicating an application. So they do ask the reason that your spouse isn't accompanying. It's one of the questions. But my spouse is not accompanying me because we have significant business interests in our home country, and it will take more time than we have available to wrap it up. That's a perfect answer. It's 100% acceptable. And in terms of having your child accompany you, yes, that's totally fine. So everything that you have here, I don't see any problems with it at all. And the reality is, if your CRS score is 446, but you with your husband accompanying you, it isn't that high, which I suspect is the case, then you wouldn't be able to immigrate anyways, because 440 points as of today. What are we today? It's all a blur. October the 30th, one day before Halloween here in Canada. As of today, October the 30th, 2018, this whole year, no one that has had a comprehensive ranking score below 440 has been drawn, except for under the Federal Skilled Trade Program. So any federal skilled worker programs are all at that 440 level. So that's the way that you're going to be able to go. So honest, forthright, open, not concealing anything. That's how you succeed with immigration. All right. Next one. This one here. I better make sure that make sure that I haven't already answered this one. Okay, so this one is from Visha, and it looks like a follow-up question from last week. So Visha is getting free legal advice. Well, no, it's not legal advice, but she's getting her generic questions answered by a Canadian immigration lawyer at no cost. So congratulations, Visha. Okay, follow-up from the last question. And this would be my last question, I promise. Okay, Visha. You indicated that I would be needing the affidavits from the two persons to cover the entire period. Can one affidavit reference the other, since the list of duties and responsibilities would be very similar? For instance, I have witnessed her performing her duties and responsibilities similar to those specified in the affidavit of Mr. John, dated with due diligence as follows. List all duties and responsibilities. Okay, so basically, I'm just going to review this very quickly. The other one, if your position that you're trying to claim, these two different positions, Visha. So basically, she isn't able to get the reference letter that covers all of her work experience with this company. And so if you're unable to get that reference letter, I have a number of different things that I recommend, including affidavits or sworn statements from people that worked with you in your company. If you have two positions and they're both in the same company and one person can attest to what you did, then yeah, one statement is enough. You don't need two separate people to do that. If one person can legitimately step in and have the ability to swear that they know you've performed those duties or whatever it is that you're missing from your reference letter. Okay, so that's a good question, Visha. There you go, folks. Okay, we'll throw that one away. Okay, next one coming up here. This one. Okay, this one is from Aria, and it says, "Good morning, Mr. Holte." Okay, Holte. Dropped an H there, but that's okay. Is it a good idea to provide TD4 tax return slips for foreign work experience? So temporary employee for 7 years, I work 40 hours per week for approximately 35 to 45 weeks per year. Or is it too much unnecessary information? Okay. If you cannot provide a reference letter and pay stubs, then I always default back to the tax documents because it's another evidence, something that you can't fake. Well, I guess you could if you were faking the actual document, but the reality is if it's an official document from a third party, like a government, then it's going to carry way more weight than just you saying, I worked this much time. So yeah, Aria, using tax slips is a great way of confirming or helping to supplement what you have to prove your work history. Great. Good question, Aria. Okay, next one here. This one is from Tamirlan, and he says, "Hello, Mark. I hope you're doing well. My question is about..." Okay, this one's about spousal sponsorship. Okay, well, do you know what? It still has an element to the eAPR, so we're going to follow it through. My question is about spouse sponsorship. If I get married after submitting my eAPR, but before a decision on my application, will I be able to include my spouse into my application? Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. Tamirlan, this is actually a great question. And so those of you who are watching this, I'm going to go in, I'm going to open up. Wow, my screen is so clogged full of windows that I've got to close all them off. I must have like 100 here. Wow. Whenever I do my consults with my clients, I share my screen and I actually show them where to find the information. And I put the links into, if it's a Skype call, into the comment section so that they have a whole resource of everything that we've talked about. But it's not so good when I'm doing my my EE Live Q&As, because then I'm held up trying to make room for new discussions. Okay, let's go to a new screen here. And I'm going to, I could blow it up just a little bit bigger here maybe. Who knows whether that works. Okay, and now what I'm going to type in here is express entry. And I'm going to type in A11.2. What does that stand for? That basically means Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, Section 11.2. And this is the policy that relates to the specific question that Tamirlan asked about, can I get married after I submit my eAPR? Well, the answer, and you can see here, let's see when this was last updated. I always go back and take a look. So October the 5th, this was last updated just recently. And so there are questions here about changes to family composition. And this is the one. So all family members must be examined, whether they're accompanying or not. Family members can be added to the application at any time during the process, including after the visa is issued, but prior to obtaining permanent resident status. Applicants are instructed to inform IRCC immediately. So step one, if you are getting married and you've already submitted your eAPR And this is, remember, right here, prior to obtaining permanent resident status. So that's after your visa has been issued. You can still add someone, but before you actually land and become a permanent resident. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. So you need to inform IRCC immediately. And you can see here that they outline very clearly, but you can't fake this. You can't just get married just to bring someone along when it's not legitimate. So you may not include a spouse if your relationship was entered into primarily to acquire a status for them in Canada. So if someone says, hey, I'll give you $10,000 to marry me. I know you've got your eAPR already in the queue. Can you add me on? I'll pay you $10,000 cash to marry me and include me within your application. Well, if that intention, getting married, was primarily to secure immigration status for that person, then you yourself can run into problems. So you can't, and it works the same way for adding an adopted child. It has to be legitimate. So it has to be a part of exactly what you guys are doing. So you have to be able to prove the genuineness. And so you can see here that section A11.2 does not apply when an applicant adds a family member to their application after the eAPR. However, the family member will have to be assessed, and the principal applicant must provide IRCC with this information. Now, there's actually more, because I have gone through this process with a number of different clients, and there's more than just the additional family information that they need to complete. But this is a very, very important question that many people ask. I will tell you though that if you get married after your eAPR, that generally can work. But if you're married before, and I know because I've since in the beginning days of Express Entry, some people used listing their spouse as non-accompanying just to get around the comprehensive ranking system points and the way they prejudice married couples. And so in those days, people would list their spouse as non-accompanying, and then after they submitted their eAPR, say, oh, my spouse changed their mind. Now I want them to come. Understand, in those circumstances, IRCC can reassess all of your comprehensive ranking system points. And in the context of that reassessment, if you fall below the pass mark when you received your ITA during that round of invitation, then you can lose everything that you've worked towards. So if you have any questions about this, I highly recommend that you reach out and you actually contact me and we set up a consultation to discuss the strategy, because it is not something that you want to take lightly. But to Merlin, that was a great question. That was one that I know really will help a lot of our listeners. Okay, now we're going to jump back here to me, and we're going to go to our next question. And this one is from Syed. And he says, my wife is a secondary applicant, and she's got property that she shares with her father that's worth about $25,000. My question is, can I show my wife's property share amount as proof of funds with all supporting documents, affidavit, blah, 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 blah? Well, the first and simple response is no. Property evaluations mean nothing. You actually need to liquidate that property so it is usable, unencumbered funds that are in your account. So when it comes to property, no, property valuations won't work. And let's see here. Okay, so as I read this question, he says, keep in mind these funds are just 2.5 months old, as she got her share on August of 2018 via bank draft. Okay, so Syed, I can see now that yes, they went ahead and sold the property. So if you do that and you can trace the source of those funds, then you're still fine. There's no problem. The only reason IRCC questions and wants to see 6 months of financial documentation is to show that it's actually yours. It's not a loan from someone, and that it's for your unilateral use in settling in Canada. And they put that in place for a reason, because they don't want people arriving in Canada, struggling to find a job, and then not having a means of supporting themselves until they get on their feet. The number of like the proof of funds amounts that are asked for, the settlement amounts that are required are there because they want to make sure you have enough money to actually get yourself settled in Canada. Great. And then the third question is, if yes, please tell me the property share affidavit just need to scan or a need to notarize before scanning. I would follow whatever process you need to follow that makes the process legal in your country. Okay. I had sneezing like crazy. When it gets winter in Alberta, it tends to get really dry. And so often there are allergies in the spring sometime that I suffer from. And when it starts to get winter, although right now, guys, it is actually really nice outside. I came into the office really early because I was so far behind everything. But let's see what the temperature is in Lethbridge right now. Let's see if we can find it. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. Check it out. Balmy 12 degrees Celsius. It is beautiful outside. Okay, great question, Syed. Okay, next question. This one is from Abdullah. And Abdullah says, hey there, I'm Abdullah from Lahore, Pakistan. My question is, what documents do we need to show for our siblings in order to collect 15 points in the express entry system? I'm aware we need the PR card of the sibling, but it takes around 45 days to arrive. But can we claim points after the sibling lands in Canada for the first time with their COPR? Abdullah, I would strongly, strongly discourage you in trying to do this. You need to have time for that sibling to actually get settled in Canada. And why? Because there are specific expectations, specific components that you have to demonstrate to show that your sibling actually lives in Canada. And so if we go through this process, I'm going to find sibling. Let's see here. Make sure I've got the right one here. So it's family member. We're going to scroll down here. It's at near the very end. Okay. So this is proof of relationship to a relative in Canada. And this is the express entry. I can get down here again. This here is where the government posts their instructions to their officers on what documentation is needed in order to prove certain aspects of your express entry process. So this completeness check instructions, if I scroll down here, you'll see these are the instructions for proving that you have a sibling. So this includes an adult brother or sister. So when you're going through this process, you can see here that in order to establish that you actually have a sibling in Canada, you need to provide proof of that person's, you can see here, a copy of both sides of their citizenship document or their permanent resident card must be provided. So without it, you're not even getting through the gate. The next thing is evidence that they currently reside in Canada. So what are evidence of that? Well, usually what they're looking for is a lease, a mortgage document, utility bills, something showing their name and that they're actually living in Canada, and that it needs to show that their address and should be recent. So within 6 months is what they usually look at. And then proof that you guys are actually related. So birth certificates that show both of your parents and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So in a short answer to your question there, no, you can't just often turn around and include them if you're filing your eAPR until they can actually provide this. In other words, a copy of their permanent resident card. Okay. But good question. Okay. Next one we have lined up here, and I'll make a note of this as well, is from Eazias. Isaiah. Wow, I can't pronounce this, but you know what? Using my process of deduction, I think this is Isaiah. I think, if I was to pronounce it in English. So I'm going to go with Isaiah. Okay. Isaiah says, thanks for your effort towards enlightening members on immigration regulations. You're doing an awesome job. If you can, please guide me on the following. My marriage has happened as ceremony according to our rituals, but marriage certificate consists the date which is subsequent to our actual marriage date due to legislative regulations on age of marriage. I have my son born prior to registration of marriage. My spouse is not accompanying and my son is accompanying. I've applied for PR with date of marriage as actual date and submit marriage certificate with subsequent date. Can I submit any letter of explanation which would be acceptable by officers? Isaiah, I would do exactly what you've indicated here. If you're at the eAPR stage of your application, then you need to explain everything. Explain why you answered the questions you did, provide the evidence to support it. It's only in situations when you're trying to be deceptive or hide something or deliberately put incorrect information in, that's when you have problems. Because understand the express entry process is all online. there isn't a lot of room to answer questions in a free and open way. You have to fit within the boxes that they give. You have to select the check down, select the drop down menus in some cases. And it's not always easy. So the letter of explanation process is exactly where you can explain everything else in your application that might be confusing for an officer. And the officers do the very best that they can to interpret things. But sometimes that letter of explanation really helps to clarify things. So good question. Okay, next one here. This one is from Hashman, and he says, "Hi, I'm currently on a student visa in Canada right now." Great. I have 2 questions. Am I allowed to do freelance work for a client from the United States or any other country overseas? Short answer, yes. That's not considered to be work in Canada. And I would go through and hunt down and try and find the section on working. I wonder if I can. Okay, you guys are going to see exactly what happens with Mark here when I'm trying to give actual proof of the questions that are being asked. Okay, so let's go in here and I'm going to type in IRCC. What is work? Let's try that. Okay, I may have even found it. So we know what work is, wages or commission. It's an activity that competes directly in the Canadian labor market. Both of those things don't apply to you, okay? So you're not being paid in Canada. The activity doesn't compete. But here's some examples of work. So examples of work include, coming to repair, self-employment, unpaid employment undertaken for the purposes of obtaining work experience. So those of you who start jobs early, just doing training, but you're not being paid, doesn't matter, that's still work. So if you scroll down here, these are some examples of what would not normally be remunerated. And so volunteer work, great. Unremunerated help by a friend or a family member. Now here's the one that applies to you. Okay, so long distance by telephone or internet, work done by a temporary resident whose employer is outside Canada and who is remunerated from outside Canada. And the key for all of these things is that this is something that would, that is ancillary to the main purpose of you being in Canada. And what is that main purpose? In your case, it's studying. So I think you're probably just fine doing that. So the key is that you are not working for a company in Canada and that you are being paid and everything outside of Canada, or at least by an entity outside of Canada. So that's a really good question. Okay, then it says, if yes, then can I do it for more than 20 hours per week, provided that I lawfully pay taxes of whatever I earn? Okay, well, you're not going to be paying taxes in Canada. If you are, then that employer is potentially a Canadian employer, and then that would be work that does not allow you to work more than 20 hours off campus. So, or more than 20 hours while you're going to school. So your question's a little bit confusing there, Hashman. If you're working for someone outside of Canada, then you're not earning employment income in Canada that's taxable. But with all of that being said, I want to qualify, I'm not a tax lawyer. I'm not an accountant. And so if you feel like there is a potential that your situation may justify the need for you to pay taxes in Canada, then I recommend you go see a tax accountant. Go see an accountant to confirm, or I should say a tax lawyer and an accountant to confirm if that's the case. If it is, then I would strongly discourage you from doing this more than 20 hours if it is to be considered work that is in Canada. Okay, great question. And then the last one for all of you patient folks out there, the last one is from Milind. And Milind says, hope you're doing well. I have been following your YouTube channel for almost a year now. Wow, that's awesome. Your videos are very long, but it's worth spending the time watching it just because of sheer knowledge you share with people. I really appreciate it. And Milind, I want to say thank you. And this is something that I've seriously been looking at. My videos are not easy to search. The content is very long and many people don't have the time to go and sift through it. But remember, all of you, if you go into the description on the video, you can see that I have tried to timestamp each of these questions that people are asking so that people can go down and search. And they're looking for a topic that they want answers for. They can scroll down and see if it was asked within the context of one of my EE Live Q&As. Okay, so here's the question. what difference it would create if I hire you for immigration process against if I do it by myself. Does people who complete their profile through the immigration officer portal gets preference over who process their own profile? Million, this is a great question. I get it all the time from people. Why should I hire you? If I hire you, what's the difference between paying you as a lawyer versus submitting it myself? First off, please understand that you are not getting any special treatment. Your application is not going to be bumped up in the queue or processed faster just because you've used a Canadian immigration lawyer or an immigration consultant. So you're not getting special treatment. So then the question becomes, well, what am I getting? Well, you're getting who you're hiring. And so for myself, I'm not going to go on here and extol all of the virtues and the accolades and everything that I have achieved over the last many years of practicing in this area. But understand, for me, what you get is someone who's going to review your application in painstaking detail before it goes out, that is going to work directly with you to make sure that you're not missing anything. And first and foremost, is not going to take your money unless they know you have an excellent chance of succeeding. That's the difference between a good immigration lawyer and a crappy immigration consultant who is only looking to exploit you. So it's a huge difference. And that's one of the most important things. But what else? Well, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been involved in immigration. I have been an immigration lawyer since 2005 when I was officially called as a lawyer. But before that, even as an articling student and as a summer student, I was doing immigration. And before that, I worked on the border as an immigration officer. So ultimately, it comes down to the qualifications of the individual that's representing you. Do not go on whoever's the cheapest, because you get exactly what you pay for. But at the same time, you have to be mindful of who you're giving the money to and whether or not what you're paying is actually worth it. But when it comes down to the application, if I screw up on your application, then you can report me to the Law Society of Alberta, and I could potentially be disbarred if it's found that I've somehow mismanaged your file. And so that's the protection you have by hiring an immigration lawyer. But as far as me, well, you've watched my videos for a year. So who else in all of internet can you show me another immigration lawyer that does what I do? Or even another immigration consultant that does what I do? That's my challenge to you. And at the end of the day, you can see a lot of my questions are answered live. I don't try to hide things or conceal my lack of knowledge. Everything is out there. So you can make a decision yourself. But one thing's for certain, I do not charge the same as a lot of overseas agents and consultants, because you're getting me, Canadian immigration lawyer Mark Holthe, ex-immigration officer, and even my former experience as a high school teacher has played a role in exactly who I am and the representation I offer. So there we go. Great question. And we have succeeded in answering all of the paper ones. We have a solid 15 minutes now to answer all of the people's live questions. And so if I jump over here to my screen and I'm going to open this up. Now I'm at the stage where right after, let's see, I've got a question here that says, what are the opportunities for primary school teachers? I'm going to say they're pretty limited. So it's not an occupation in demand in Canada. And unless you can qualify independently through express entry, you're probably not going to be able to get through one of the PNPs because you are a primary school teacher. Now, with that being said, on that list, understand that there are, as far as school teachers, there are early childhood educators, which are below and outside of a traditional school setting, but programs like the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program, early childhood educators are actually on that list. But an early childhood educator is different than a primary school teacher. So be aware of that. Okay, and because your name is not written or displayed in English, I can't specifically answer you. Okay, so now we're with Justin. Justin, my friend. Okay. All right, let's see if I can even try to timestamp some of these ones. It's always difficult, guys, but Okay, I wish someone could be there to help timestamp all of these listener questions, because if people saw how many I answered, I think they'd be blown away. Okay, Justin says, hi Mark, while submitting docs post-ITA, I have an Indian degree and a Canadian postgrad diploma. Thereafter, I uploaded all ECA degree mark sheets for Indian degree. However, for Canadian postgrad diploma, I can only upload transcript and graduation letter instead of degree. Will this be a problem? My current application status, AOR September 3rd, says we are processing your background check with MEP. Thank you. This is entirely up to the immigration officer. So they have the discretion to decide whether or not to accept what you're giving. You can see now in your own personal document checklist, it is asking for both the transcript and your degree. And often they ask in two separate spots. So ultimately, it'll come down to that officer if they feel that what you've provided is sufficient to prove your Canadian education. I would have to say, Justin, that you're probably going to be okay, especially if you're at the stage now where they're doing background checks. But ultimately, it's up to that officer. So I always advise my clients, don't submit unless you have everything that they're asking for. Then you're never going to run into a problem where you're leaving discretion in the hands of an officer. Okay, great question. All right, Syed says, I have worked for a bank under NOC 6235 for 1 year and 3 months and worked for the capital market regulator body for 2 years under NOC 1112. I'm confused. What is the primary NOC and what is the secondary NOC? So, Syed, everybody has to choose one primary NOC. And that primary NOC is used to assess your eligibility under, if you're outside of Canada, the Federal Skilled Worker Program. The main factors that you have to focus on are that you have at least 1 year of continuous skilled work experience. That's paid. That's if full-time, 30 hours a week for 1,560 hours minimum for the year. That's the main hurdle. So if you have completed that and you've met that obligation as your primary NOC, then when it comes to the comprehensive ranking system assessment, you can use other NOCs like secondaries to add to your comprehensive ranking system points. But when it comes to the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you can only claim work experience in one NOC for the purposes of your eligibility. So that's all of those. Well, you know what, guys? I'm going to take a second. I'm going to show you this. And I'm going to make a note here, timestamp on this one, which is 4830, which is eligibility. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. And I'm going to jump on here. And I'm going to pull this up. So Federal Skilled Worker Program eligibility. Many of you guys don't even understand this, and it's not something I've talked about for quite a while. But in order to get through, even to submit your profile into the Express Entry pool, you have to qualify under one of the Canadian permanent resident programs. Express Entry is not a program. It's just a process. It's a system in which they assess candidates against each other to determine who they're going to allow apply for permanent residence. So the Federal Skilled Worker Program requires that you meet certain expectations and certain obligations. And one of them is that you reach, if we look here, 67 points out of the 100-point grid for the selection factor. And under the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you'll see that these selection factors mirror or are very close to the comprehensive ranking system, but they're not the comprehensive ranking system. And so when you are going through this process, before you can even be eligible to enter a profile, you have to meet these requirements. And if we go down here and I scroll down to work experience, you'll see that you get certain points for the number of years of skilled work experience that you have. So the minimum threshold to get 9 points is 1. 1 year gets you 9 points. 6 years or more gets you 15. So at no point within the Express Entry system should you ever worry about claiming more than 6 years of skilled work experience, because you're not getting any points through the eligibility assessment of the Federal Skilled Worker Program, and comprehensive ranking system for foreign work experience is only 3. So there's no point in claiming more than 6 at any time. So when you're going through this process, in order to get these points, all of these have to be in the same NOC. So you can't use different NOCs to bundle together to show 6 years. You can only claim what's in your primary NOC. And that's just the way the Federal Skilled Worker Program was set up. Once you clear this, and once you show that you have met the 67-point threshold right here, based on these selection factors, then you can use combinations of NOCs to satisfy getting the 3 years of foreign work experience. And that's really that's really why it's important. That's why we are concerned about the primary and the secondary knock. But that's a great question. It really is. Okay. All right. I'm just putting here federal skilled worker program eligibility for that question. Okay. Let's jump back here and go to the next one. And understand, you guys, that I am just a one-man show here, so it's not easy for me to get caught up with all the questions. Okay. Let's see if I can get back to it. Okay, the next question is from Momin, and he says, my brother's brother uncle is settled in Canada. Is it necessary to mention him as a relative and prove relationship even though I won't get points for it? Are there any benefits for a non-points relative? No, there's no points at all, but you have to disclose them. One of the questions asks you, do you have family members in Canada? And uncle's an answer on the list. And so you do have to disclose them. When the time comes, some people say, I'm estranged from them. I don't talk to them. They're not friendly to me. And we've had a falling out. Well, maybe you can't get the information from them that you need. And so in those circumstances, it all comes down to you being able to justify to an officer why you can't provide the evidence of relationship. And what I do is I go back into the A11.2 assessment and I say, look, I'm not getting any points for these people. It's not affecting my minimum entry criteria or my eligibility for one of the federal programs. And it doesn't lower my CRS score because I'm not including this information for you. So that's why I'm not including it. Okay. Good question, Momin. All right. Next one is Priyank. And Priyank says, my employment was with local sole proprietor and not with a company. Will that be okay? Sure, doesn't matter. As long as you can get the reference letter, pay stubs, prove all those things that are minimum requirements for the federal skilled worker program. And that's what you need to do. And, I'll take a second here. I'll jump over to my screen once again. And while I'm here, I'm going to flip to my completeness check again, this one. And this time I'm going to go to work experience. And I think a lot of you guys probably already have gone here. You know about this. But the work experience, what you need to prove it, you need a reference letter. And remember, they say that this is mandatory. So you need to do everything in your power to get this. So it needs to be official letter with all of the address information on it. And that letter needs to include your job title, duties, responsibilities, job status, and number of hours worked per week. Okay. And you can see here, as you go down further, it says if you work experiences in Canada, then you may include your tax information slips and reflecting the time that you worked. And so that's something that the government has asked us to provide when we're demonstrating work history. And then I'll also point out that when you get to your own personal document checklist, it says pay stubs or pay slips if available. So those are some things that you will want to consider when you are proving your work experience. Okay. Let's see as I scroll back up, see if I can find my spot again. Okay, Marina says, if you have an open work permit and work in Canada for a year, do you need an LMIA or employment letter can be submitted for express entry? The work experience that you have, you need an employment letter, just like anything confirming your work history, but that company doesn't have to have an LMIA. So you can claim work experience, Canadian work experience on an open work permit, Marina. It is possible, yes. You just need to prove, and you will get those extra 35 points for the first year, and then however many else going forward, 40 if you're a single applicant. Okay. Bushra says, are there any opportunities for economics research jobs? All right, Bushra, when it comes to figuring out if there are any jobs, you always go, and I share this, it seems like most videos I do this. If you go to Service Canada's jobbank.gc.ca, this is where you can go to search different occupations all across the country to determine what the job prospects are for you. So if I make this just a little bit larger here, then it will pull up Outlook. So I search by Outlook, and in here, I can scroll here. I can type, I think, what did you say here your job was? Let me jump back. You said that your question was... See, this is what happens, guys. I have to scroll back up. It's not the most efficient way of doing it. Economics research jobs. Okay, I don't know. I'd have to actually dig deeper to see if I could actually find what this is, but let's just try economist. We'll just use that, okay? So economist, I click on here, I click search, and this may or may not be your knock, and that's fine. But when I go to Outlook and I search for economist here, it will then pull up what the job prospects are across the country. Obviously, 3 stars is good. 1 star is not very good, which means there's more people looking for jobs than there are jobs available. So if I look here and I go, let's jump all the way down to Alberta, and I look to see, okay, what's the prospects in British Columbia? 2 stars for an economist. In Alberta, 2 stars. So you can see here, and each region has their own rating too. If you're in Edmonton, then you can look there, the jobs are not very plentiful. And then in the other areas, like Calgary, the job market is not good. So generally speaking, this is where you can get all of that information to help you to know exactly, well, as close as you can, what the job markets are for that particular position. Okay, great question. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left here. So we'll go back up and see if I can continue on. Okay, Benna says, very important, sir. I have a second undocumented job that I'm that I'm using to fill my bank account. My main job is documented. Will this cause me a problem in providing my funds? No, not at all. It doesn't matter. The funds are what they are. It's not an issue at all. You just need to provide the exact information that they're asking, the bank letter, to the best that you can to provide all that evidence, and that's totally fine. Okay. Okay. My name is Bana Sharma. Okay. Bana, thanks for letting me know. I want to apply for PR. I'm a primary school teacher. I missed your answer. Please guide me, sir. You're going to have to go back and watch it, Bana. I provided a pretty detailed answer there, but the reality is, for your purposes, when it comes to primary school, there isn't really much in terms of occupations in demand for teachers. Early childhood educators, there is, for example, Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program does have that on the list for you. Okay, how to get a work permit, Anchor says, or job if I'm traveling on visitor visa to Canada. Dude, that's the golden question, Anchor. Getting a job in Canada is not easy. You get it just like anywhere else. If there's no Canadian or permanent resident available to fill the position, then the company can offer your position to you, or that position to you. If not, then the company has to prove there's no Canadian. And if there's Canadians, you're not getting a job offer. Rahul says, hello, sir, working as a clerk in India, but job responsibilities matching with administrative assistant. Will it okay? It all comes down to your duties. You have to prove that the duties of your position, that you're performing a substantial number of the main duties in the position profile on the NOC. So you're saying that you worked as a clerk. Well, that's usually a low skill, but it doesn't matter. Administrative assistant, it all comes down to the duties. So if I go back in here quick and I share my screen and I go to the NOC 2016, pop it up, and then I type in admin assistant here, administrative. We'll just do that and then see what comes up here. Okay, other administrative services, government, library, administrative officers, administrative assistants. So administrative assistants is skilled. And in order to qualify, you have to demonstrate that you've performed all of the activities in the lead statement. And where am I getting this from? The actual immigration regulations. And you also need to provide that you have performed a substantial number of these main duties, which can be translated to 75. Anything down here that says may, I don't equate that into the calculation. So it means it's optional. But these are the main duties. And so I go from a substantial number of these, which is about 75%, more or less, give or take. That's just a guideline, not a hard and fast rule. Okay, good question. All right, and this will be the last question of the day. Okay, and we will find someone who I have not yet answered. Let's see. Let's see here. Who's going to be the lucky contestant? Okay, Guillermo says, always the pay stubs are required, even the job letter is settled. Okay, I think Guillermo, what you're asking there is the last question is, do you always have to provide pay stubs? Or if you've got a letter that works and meets the requirements of immigration, can you get by with just the reference letter? Well, if you look at the document checklist, it clearly states that you need to provide a reference letter with all of the information that they've asked for, and then pay stubs if available. So they're not strictly mandatory, But I always try to include everything I can to prove and substantiate and back up everything that I include within my applications. I don't take chances. I never ever leave any decision in the hands of an officer that's subjective or discretionary. Obviously, they have a tough job to do. They do the best that they can. But unless you give them the information or the documentation that they need to make the right decision, then they're gonna go by their best belief based on the information, and they're going to use a balance of probabilities and, which means, do I believe this more, is it more likely than not, essentially? And that's essentially the standard they use. All right, guys, this has been an absolutely wonderful EE Live Q&A. I want to thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Some of you who watch this on YouTube, or some of you that watch it within our group, you probably noticed that every Tuesday at noon, I do this. I answer these questions, and I don't get through everyone. I don't get through all of the questions that come in via email. I don't get through all of the questions that people are posting live, and I really am grateful that you guys are doing this. But the reality is, it's for that reason that I created this Express Entry step-by-step guide to doing it yourself. I created it because I knew that people wouldn't be able to get all their questions answered, and it's just not practical for me to do it. I'm an immigration lawyer. I charge for my fees. I charge for the service. I charge for my knowledge. But notwithstanding that, I do this. And why do I do it? To build a platform to help people who actually just want to hire someone to represent them and they want peace of mind, that they'll see everything that I'm doing and realize that I know what I'm talking about and that I'm someone that's worthwhile hiring. But I do this to demonstrate. But for those who decide, I really want to do it myself, but I just need a little bit of help, just a little bit of guidance. That's why this Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide was created. And I just recently updated all of the profile section, and I'm slowly working through the eAPR section because it's more difficult, because I actually have to work through a live example, and I have to redact all the information to make sure that none of it is sharing confidential information. And so it takes me a little bit longer to update it, but I'm going to be launching something really cool here. We've crossed over 120,000 members in our Facebook group, and I made you a promise that I was going to do something pretty cool to celebrate that. But I've just been so overwhelmed getting my son off on his mission, and I'll post this up here again. There's my son right there in the white shirt and tie. And if you see any missionaries all around the world with a name tag on, be kind to them because my son is out there, and my daughter, both serving missions for our church. So be kind to them if you see them. Don't throw anything at them. Although there is something to be learned by being mocked and run out of town. You learn to realize what's really important in life. So anyways, so this year you guys can access it easy just by going to the Canadian Immigration Institute, searching www.canadianimmigrationinstitute.com, and that will take you right here. You can also go to the banner image in the Express Entry Law private Facebook group, click on it, and there's links there. And for those of you who say, look, Mark, I've got questions that I can't find anywhere, I just need you to answer for me, then all you have to do is go to my firm website, and in the comment section below, I'm not sure if any of my moderators are here or any of you who knows where it is, you can just post a link to the contact. I'll post it in the comments here, a link to where you can book consultations with me, and I'd love to represent you. In fact, I've got consults all day today, and I do most days. So this is the part that I love the most. All right, guys, this is Mark Holty, Canadian immigration lawyer, signing off today, wishing you guys all the best as you navigate this crazy world we call Express Entry. Bye.